The group East Coastin'.
The East Coastin'.
The East Coastin'.
So guess what? It's happening anyway.
What's going on, guys? A lot of questions, a lot of comments. Everybody's been asking about these bike check videos. So here's one of many. We're gonna start giving you guys a full breakdown on exactly what we ride and what we do to set these bikes up. We're gonna start with my 2002 Harley Davidson Road Glide. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I'm sure you've seen over the years, this thing has been through a lot. This is my original Road Glide from 2019. Obviously it was black for a long time. You've seen it get crashed, ended up on the couch at one point. My buddy G rode it off the ramp. Little Paulie's taken this thing down a couple times, so it's been through a lot. Finally this year, right before Daytona Bike Week, I did a full rebuild on it. Got painted, we did a big motor in it, and we're gonna give you the full breakdown on exactly what this bike is. My buddy Jeff from After Hour Paintworks absolutely killed the paint job on this thing. We were surfing around ideas, we're gonna get super crazy. I was talking about possibly flaming this thing, but I truly love Harley Davidson's like factory tin sets. So if you look at any of my other bikes, they're all like one color. Harley Davidson, like the 2 pinstripes, just super classy. So I kept it a Harley Davidson color. This is actually Harley Davidson's Concord Purple. I tossed in a pink pinstripe and the lavender. I really let him go basically crazy with it as much as he wanted to pinstripe the bags, the center console, glove box doors, all the cool stuff, the fairing, and he absolutely killed it. We're super stoked on it. I'm sure you've seen too at one point, Carlos, as soon as I had this thing painted, took me out, got the fairing a little bit, but she still cleans up. So I guess we'll start with suspension. The biggest thing is obviously the ride height. This thing is like super jacked up compared to a lot of other Road Glides out there. In the front, it has 2 over trike tubes along with Legend suspension drop-in cartridges. So that's gonna give us that big ride height for obviously wheelies and jumping stuff and things like that. In the back, we're running 14-inch Legends as well with the remote reservoirs. Originally, this bike obviously had a 16-inch front and a 16-inch rear. These are RONS Y-spoke wheels, so we have a 21-inch front and an 18-inch rear. That on top of the suspension, the 2 over in the front and obviously the 14s in the back really skyjacks this thing, so it gives it a sick lift. Along with those RONS wheels, it's got RONS jagged rotors, 11/8 in the front. Also, it has an 11/8 in the rear. This bike came from the factory. It's supposed to have 11/5 rotor. I actually modified a newer Brembo caliper off of a 2008 and up touring bike, so that way it was able to fit the 11/8 rotor. So we have 11/8 rotors all the way around. The bagger being so heavy, the belts don't last long. So from stock, a couple burnouts, couple wheelies, belt snaps right off. It's been converted over to chain drive. A lot of people think that we changed the gearing dramatically to be able to wheelie these things. And if you could believe it, we tried to get the chain drive conversion to as close as we can get to stock, because we still ride these things on the highway. We ride them long distance. So the gearing that is on this bike is as close to stock gearing as it gets. The next biggest thing is people are always asking, how big is the motor? It's got to be built. We have done it with stock motors. We've rode 88s in these bikes before. Obviously, it's not as fun. It's honestly really slow. You could do the burnouts, you could do the wheelies, you can hop on the highway, but it's just not that cool. So this motor originally came out, it was an 88. It's been blown up a few times, but right now it's got a Dark Horse cranked in the bottom end. It's punched out to a 98. It's got Shop 67's big bore kit. It has Shop 67 CNC ported heads. Has a ton of fueling components. The cam chest kit, 574 cams, has the Beehive valve springs in there as well. Jimmy at HPI, they assembled the entire motor, ran it on the dyno. Also from HPI, it's got the intake, their throttle body, and their horsepower exhaust. Big thing with the sound is the Thundermax. This bike's a 2002, so it's the first year of the Delphi fuel injection system. It's the better fuel injection system, obviously in our preference, I would say. The years before that, it's like Magnelli, I'm not even sure the exact name of it, but they don't run as good. They definitely aren't as tunable. This Delphi combined with the Thundermax and the HPI exhaust sounds absolutely sick. For bar and riser setup, I'm running Thrashing Supply straight 8s, and then I'm running their aggressive bend bars. A couple years ago, Lance was giving me a hard time about how I didn't run his handlebars. We were battling it back and forth. So I just told him he had too much sweep, basically too much pullback. So we came up with this design. They have a 5-degree sweep, so they're still pretty straight. They're super aggressive, but like we said, for our style riding, this is like my go-to, what we love to ride. Controls on top of the handlebars, I simplified a lot of stuff. This bike was getting beat on, it was crashed a bunch, so I didn't feel like running the wires every time. So the left side is your high beam and your blinker, your horn. I just ran the high beam on high all the time, ditched to complete the rest of the switches. For the right side, did the exact same thing. I ran the run button on all the time, so you just give the bike power, push the starter, fired right up. That was my way to basically delete the wiring and just simplify the handlebars. Once I did that, I got a performance machine, throttle tube and housing. We tossed on the Brembo RSC19. This thing is like absolutely killer. It's fully adjustable. Doing rowers, long distance, all that stuff definitely helps without the brakes overheating. And then I have an easy pull clutch lever on the side. Just simplifies the whole handlebars, super clean look. When I simplified the controls on this thing, I also simplified a lot of the other wiring. We got rid of the Harley Davidson like style deck up here. I ended up going with Plex Audio has a Bluetooth receiver. I tossed that inside the fairing, so now when you give the bike power, it automatically connects to your phone. It's fully adjustable. Your speaker sound and all that is all through your cell phone. I don't know if you ever took apart one of these early model touring bikes. There's a ton of wiring, ton of stuff going on inside that fairing. So I just want to simplify that the most I could. I tossed this block off plate in here, obviously for the look, wasn't just a giant hole in my fairing. But I was having some issues with the deck in general. Like whenever I would drop back scrape or you rev the bike up real high, the radio would restart. Once I put that Bluetooth receiver in there, I had no more problems. So it's definitely cleaner look, super simple, goes right to your phone. There's no hassles with it. For foot controls, I'm running Thrash and Supply Apex floorboards in the front and the rear. That's really big for when you're wheeling. These ones are a little bit smaller than their full-size board. I always like that because on the other full-size board, your foot is locked farther back. These are a little bit shorter, so your foot's locked a little bit more comfortable position. So when you're wheeling, you don't obviously fall off the bike. It also has a Thrash and Supply billet shifter tip. Their adjustable brake arm and their tip as well. This thing's had a Bunk King crash bar on here. I would definitely push that towards anybody who's learning how to stunt ride if you're trying to do donuts or trying to wheelie. Your factory Harley Davidson crash bar, the way it mounts is it goes to your frame and then to your inner and outer fairing. So if you do fall learning how to drift, the first thing it does is break your fairing when that bar bends. So if you run the Bunk King one, it mounts to your frame down lower, but the Bunk King crash bar also comes with these tank mounts. So it goes from your tank frame mounts to your inner fairing. So if you do fall, the crash bar will get bent and it won't affect your fairing, it won't affect your paint. My most recent update to this thing, we tossed on a LaPera seat. This thing's super sick. It's really grippy. It's definitely appealing because it's got some pink stitching on the front and the side. And my favorite thing is it's not as narrow as a lot of the aftermarket companies. This thing's super wide, so it holds you in place. Definitely a quality seat. Super stoked to be working with them. Some of the aesthetic stuff, it's got East Coast and Derby cover, air cleaner cover. It's fully decked out with a bunch of ARP bolts, the motor, the transmission, the engine, a bunch of the accessories. Obviously this backing plate, the risers, the fairing mount. It's got ARP bolts all over the place. One of the coolest things I like about the bike was I found this Clockworks windshield. I didn't know they made purple. After I had painted the bike, I was going to order a black when I seen purple and it matched perfectly, so I was super stoked on that. Also too, it's got Scrape City's titanium on the back. Every time we go to shows, a lot of the older crowd, they go absolutely crazy when you're laying sparks. I'm like, dude, what's going on with that thing? I had no idea, we just have a piece of titanium bolted to the back, but it's definitely a must for shows and on the street. Tips and tricks with these things, obviously the bagger, there's so much going on all the time. One of the biggest things that I would push towards people is creating one of these covers, or basically brackets that would hold your dipstick on. These bikes create a lot of pressure and it ends up blowing the dipstick, tossing oil all over the place. And when it does toss the oil, not only does it go all over your rotor and your tire, but it gets on the road and takes somebody else out. That's already happened to me previously. I was in Vegas a couple years ago. My buddy didn't have the bracket, did a wheelie, dipstick popped out, tossed oil everywhere. I pulled out, went flying. We'll clip that video in here too as well. Also, the oil pan mod is a must on these bikes. The oil pan on the touring bikes is super thin. The Dyna, you could kind of get away with it for a little while if you're not wheeling very far because there's enough oil for the pickup to get to it. But these touring pans, 10-second wheelie, this thing's starting for oil, it's ticking away. The oil pan is super low, so we actually modify the pan with a pickup tube. So when you're wheeling, the straw basically picks up oil from the back and feeds the motor so you don't blow the motor. A lot of people ask, how do we get the front tire to not push, not wash out? Biggest thing is the front tire. We're running Shinko 777s in the front, so they're super grippy, super sticky. And that allows you to do that rolling burnout or that intricate tight stuff without the front tire washing out. In the rear, we're running the Shinko 999. The tire is designed, obviously, it's called long haul. It's for long distance, stuff like that. It takes a while to melt, but it's great for stunt riding as well. Because when you're doing burnouts, this and that, the tire lasts so much longer than any other really aftermarket or factory tire. PSI, that's also a big question. In the back, I'm running 30 to 40 pounds. It's kind of a lot of air, so that tire does get a little slippery, a little greasy. In the front, we're running between 30 and 35. We keep it down low a little bit and keep the front tire planted. I'm pretty sure I covered all the big questions, the tire pressure, suspension setup, chain drive kit, how big the motor is. If you guys have any more questions, make sure you comment below. We're gonna be doing a lot more of these bike check videos. Definitely some tech tips on the stunt riding stuff because I know you guys really like that. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you guys wanna see.